Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit like, follow, or subscribe on the platform that you're listening to us on. You can also check out my work at the loudest.com on the planet, knac.com, for exclusive hard rock and heavy metal interviews, live show coverage, album reviews, and more. My guest for episode 219 is guitarist GREG HART of the UK hard rock act, Cats in Space. Cats in Space released their seventh studio album, Time Machine, on October 25th, 2024, through Esoteric, Antenna, and Cherry Red Records. Fantastic album. I wish I listened to the album before I made my best of 2024 list. This album would have been in my top 3 for sure, if not number 2 or number 1. After listening to it, I said, I have to find out more about this band. As luck would have it, GREG HART was available, and here he is to tell you more about Cats in Space and their latest album, Time Machine. If I knew absolutely nothing about Cats in Space, how would you describe the band's music to me?
I would say it's very heavily influenced by 70s, all the 70s kind of classic rock, a little bit of pop, kind of commercial kind of rock. No borders really. We don't box ourselves in. So I'd say we're quite a broad spectrum. You could say, well, we get compared to bands like Queen and ELO, 10cc, The Sweet, John Miles, so I'd say we're somewhere along that, which is always good to know.
Now, Cats in Space released their debut album, Too Many Gods, in 2015. How did everybody come together to form this band originally?
Well, originally it was just a studio project that was going to be myself, Mick Wilson, who was at the time the singer in 10cc, and Stevie Bacon, the Cats in Space drummer. But it was basically just going to be like just a project. I just wanted to do an album of songs that I really wanted to do in the kind of music that I always wanted to try and aim for, that I couldn't do in my previous bands. So it was literally just the studio thing, and it kind of grew from there. I got a few guys in who I knew. Dean Howard on guitar, he came in and played some tracks, ends up playing the whole album obviously. I got Andy Stewart on keyboards, who's an old friend of mine that we've been playing together for over 40 years at that time. Jeff Brown, who had been a member of The Sweet for many years, and a singer called Paul Manzi, who I'd met previously in some theatre shows. And we just all got together and kind of made a bit of magic. Magic happened, it was very non-contrived. It just happened, but it was always going to be just like a one-album studio project. And then Dean Howard made the famous saying of, Greg, you've got to take this on the road. It's too good not to play live. And I'm like, oh, no, I wasn't planning on doing that. And it kind of grew from there. The minute the band went live and we realised that we were a really good live band, we play so well together. It really is like a magical bond that we've got. And I just thought, wow, this is the best band I've ever been in by a mile. And from there we got management and it rolled on, and then the next album come along and doodly-doodly-doo. And here we are in our 10th year now, which is ridiculous.
And you've just released your 7th studio album, Time Machine, through Esoteric, Antenna, Cherry Red Records. This is the follow-up to your 2022 album, Kickstart the Sun. Is Time Machine a concept album?
No, it's funny because a lot of our fans think that all of our albums are concept albums by the way that the titles and the songs and stuff, they do lend. I've said this many times, but when I was a kid growing up listening to Thin Lizzy and Rush and bands like that, I was desperate for the albums to be conceptual because I wanted to find a thread. I wanted to hope that there was this kind of narrative that would, like Johnny the Fox or Jailbreak, and some of the Queen albums. So when Cats in Space was formed, I thought I'd really like to try and make the albums non-conceptual, but if they want to dig deep enough, there may be a thread for them to find, Day Trip to Narnia, our third album, was the one exception. We did have a conceptual side 2 that was the story of Johnny Rocket. But Time Machine wasn't a concept album, but there was definitely, as always, there's a thread between a lot of the songs, and it's good fun seeing if people can make up a story out of it.
Well, I think with a time machine, you can go to different periods and different points and different relationships and stuff like that. So I guess it does kind of heat itself to sort of being interpreted as conceptual.
Absolutely. The minute Stevie Bacon said, "Why don't we call the next album Time Machine?" we said, "Well, they're going to think we're going to come up with this George Orwell time machine that goes back in time, and we revisit all this and that and the other and the 70s." I said, "Let's make it not about a time machine. Let's do the opposite, where you don't need a time machine," which, as the title song goes, you don't need a time machine. You've got to live in the now, because it's only the now that we've actually got. Until someone invents a time machine, which to my knowledge, I don't think there is one yet. I don't think Elon Musk has managed to make a time machine yet. Maybe he has, who knows? But so we've only got the now. So Time Machine is very much about being in the now and being there for each other, because we're still kind of post-COVID in some ways. And although we certainly didn't want to make a COVID album at all, I think the world has struggled, since the pandemic, and I think we all kind of need to look out for each other a lot more than perhaps we were before. So it's quite an emotional album, Time Machine, but yeah, we definitely did the opposite of what people thought it was going to be about. Hence, there's no time machine on the album cover.
There you go. So when it comes to songwriting in the band, are you the primary songwriter? Does everybody sort of contribute ideas collaboratively?
I'm the main songwriter. I mean, when the band started, it was very much me and my writing partner, Mick Wilson. And as time went on and things shifted and, people get busy and stuff, Stevie came in more on the lyric front. And then when Damien Edwards joined, he came and got quite involved with the lyrical front. And the three of us are the kind of the writers. I write all the music primarily. And I kind of produce it. So we work in quite a strange way. We don't just write a batch of songs and make an album out of it. We sit down and we actually have the album title before we write the album. So we're very honed in on what we want that album to appear to be. So we tend to write, with a very clear plan in mind, rather than just knocking out another 15, 10 or 12 songs, which is great fun. But so I've kind of got a lot of things in my head that kind of come out. But Steve is a very good lyric writer, and so is Damien, and Damien's fantastic at melodies. So a song like Kickstart the Sun, for instance, I had all the music written, the piano and stuff, and I had the hook line for Kickstart the Sun, but I had no idea what to do with the verse whatsoever. So I just gave Damien a piano track, and he sent me back a vocal over this piano track, and it absolutely blew me away. And I just thought, we could put that out. We could literally just put that out. It was that good. So we worked really well in that way, and we got quite a good little kind of setup.
Was there an opportunity for you guys to get together kind of in the same room and write or record parts of this album? I know everybody's busy and a lot of people are just doing collaborative things from home.
Yeah, no, we're Cats in Space has never been a home recording band. Never. The only reason I put Cats in Space together was I wanted to go back in time to how albums used to be recorded in big studios, using proper drums, all the real analog equipment, sitting behind a desk, having people in the room playing, headphones. Every album you hear of Cats in Space has been done that way. That's why there's a feel about our albums. They're not dialed in. Absolutely not. I mean, Damien dials in sometimes a guide vocal perhaps, but it's never the finished article. It could be because it's that good, but it never is. So everything that everybody has ever played on Cats in Space has been done in the room. Nothing is dialed in at all. It's no fun. I want to get into a room and imagine what it was like in 1976, we were very fortunate. We've recorded on the Trident desk that recorded some Thin Lizzy and Queen albums and David Bowie albums. In fact, it was the desk that mixed Live and Dangerous. So to spend 2 or 3 months with that desk recording on it and using these rooms to record in, it literally was like being in 1977, and that's what makes life worthwhile for me. If I can get that vibe, then that's the reason I do it. I wouldn't do it otherwise. I mean, I just couldn't do it off of a computer and just knock it in. Just couldn't do that. So we're very much live in every aspect.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the songs from the album. I believe your latest single is This Velvet Rush. Why don't you tell me a little bit what inspired that song?
Yeah, Velvet Rush. It was a song that musically I wrote ages ago for the Scarecrow album, which is our second album, which is years ago. But I never finished it, and I knew there's a bit missing. And one day it just came to me, and I sat down, twiddled away on the piano, finished the song off. I actually wrote a lyric for it, but in the end, I thought the lyric was just a little bit too close to the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, which is again off of Scarecrow. So I said to Damien, this was at the 11th hour, because we'd actually recorded the whole backing track for the album. And I said, there's something that doesn't sit right with me about the lyric, but I think I'm treading old ground and the song's too good to just bat out another lyric. So over the weekend, he went away, came back with this Velvet Rush, came to the studio, sang it in one take while I was on the phone outside on a phone call. Came in and he'd recorded the vocal, and I was like, wow. And that's the one vocal that he did that you hear on the album. That's all there is. That's it. And it's very much, I love all the old 60s TV shows. I don't know whether you've heard of Randall Hopkirk and the Persuaders. They're like spooky kind of 60s detective series in the UK. And John Barry, who is like a genius songwriter, wrote all those legendary theme tunes, And I've always been inspired by the sounds that he used to use. So Velvet Rush was heavily seeped in all of the John Barry kind of stuff from the 60s. Some people think it's a little bit like James Bond, but I'm not so sure about that. But it's definitely got that vibe. So, but it's one of my favourite songs I've ever written. It's just fabulous.
Now, do people tell you they think that the single Time Machine sounds a little bit like Baba O'Reilly by The Who?
Yeah. To be honest, we knew that when me and Stevie was demoing it, because funny thing is, me and Stevie demoed together, and he'll sit behind his drum kit and I'll play a guitar, and we actually bash things out together without a bass guitar, and it's really funny. And we was doing Time Machine, and I said, look, this is how the chords are going to go. I said, it's a little bit like The Who. And for some bizarre reason, I started playing a big, heavy bass and piano to mark the bass notes before I put a guide bass on. And the minute I did it, I went, oh my God, that is Barbara O'Reilly. We never get away with it. I mean, that really is Barbara. And then we thought, no, we'll be okay. And by the time the song was finished with the various sections to it, everybody was saying, this and I sound like The Who. I said, yeah, but we sound like Queen and we sound like ELO, and everybody nicks. If you're going to nick from the best, And I wear the Who influence very much on my sleeve. And yeah, I didn't think it would get picked up on as much as it did. But then my argument to it is The Sweet did it on Fox on the Run and The Lies in Your Eyes. Totally Barbara O'Reilly. Kiss, those three chords, whichever key you want to play them in, if you play them in that rhythm, it's Barbara O'Reilly. So we're only one of a million bands that's done it, really.
Fair enough.
In case the lawyers are watching.
Why don't you tell me a little bit on what inspired My Father's Eyes?
Father's Eyes. Yeah, that was a Damien and me composition. I wrote the music, and I wanted to write a song called My Father's Eyes. My father died in 2020 when we was doing Atlantis. Excuse me. And Damien's father died a few years before that. So I wrote the song, and I sent the demo to Dame and said, what do you think of this? I really, really like it. but I'm a verse short. I can't get the second verse. And I'm not quite sure about this little bit here. And he came back. He said, "Yeah, your song's very down. It's a bit kind of bit negative, dare I say, because my dad was quite a negative person. He was a guitar player and an artist, and I'm very fortunate to have inherited some of his talent. But he was a very negative chap, my dad. You know, he was just one of life's negative people. Very funny with it, but he'd always find a down in it, you know." And Damien said, "Well, my dad was really up and used to drive me to gigs, and he used to be really supportive of my career, whereas my dad thought I was wasting the time." So Dame's changed the words to make it more positive and uplifting, and it became a really anthemic song for everybody that's lost their dad, and it's their hero, you know. So I'm glad we did that, because my song would have been a bit miserable and he made it very triumphant. So that's the art of, you know, knowing when someone else can add to your song, and you've just got to let it go, you know, without being egotistical. But no, it's my song. So that was a classic occasion when I didn't know best.
The album comes in two different versions. There's a CD version, which runs longer than the vinyl version. Was this done more for space issues when it comes to pressing vinyl? You didn't want to do like half of a second vinyl?
Yeah, I mean, we've done 2 double vinyls. We've done however many albums. Day Trip to Narnia was a double vinyl, and Kickstart was a double vinyl. And the record company said, "No, we're not going to do a double." But we was lucky enough to get a gatefold sleeve out of them, to be honest. Joking. But I said, "We don't. The deal's off if you don't get a gatefold sleeve." So the only reason we did the CD with extra tracks was we did these live songs in the studio where our VIP events we do over here, and our super fans come in and watch us record in the studio, and they pay for the privilege. So we said we got to give them something special. So they watched us literally record Music, which is the John Miles song, and How Does It Feel, the Slade song, live in the studio with a few other Cats tracks. No Regrets we did separate. And I just said, well, look, we're kind of unknown overseas. We're okay in the UK, but we need to get people to know a lot more. And if they're not sure about us, how can we impress them? And I said, well, Music by John Miles, nobody dares cover that song. And I know it's a huge hit in Europe. And I said, why don't we just put that on the CD? And people can go, blimey, if nothing else, listen to that. And then we said, well, we might as well put on the Slade one then. And then we might as well put on No Regrets, really, and just give them 3 cover songs, which coincidentally are 3 of my favourite songs of all time. And they came out so well. We said, yeah, okay. I didn't expect people to pick up on the bonus tracks as much as they did, in a funny sort of way, because my head's so clued into just vinyl. And I was, say to the guys, when we do an album, it's purely based on what a vinyl LP would be, because that's how Cats in Space is. But the bonus tracks have caused quite a stir, which is great,
This is your first album for Esoteric Antenna, Cherry Red Records. How did you end up signing with them?
Funny enough, I was recommended them a while ago. Several people who I know in the industry do work for Cherry Red. And Vicky at Esoteric, she was forwarded some footage of us playing in London on the last tour. Said, you need to get into these guys, that they're looking for a label deal for their back catalogue, because a lot of our stuff's deleted now, the first few albums. And their plan was always to do a label deal at a certain point, because we can't, as a cottage industry that we couldn't sustain spending enormous amounts of money continually putting out back catalogue to sit on the shelves. It's too expensive for us. So with armed of all our albums, which is a pretty good package, we went, look, I'll give you all this if you want to sign us. But going forward, we're still very much an ongoing band. We're not a heritage band or a label band. We are an ongoing act. And they got very excited about that and did the deal. So it worked a treat.
So you say that you came with your catalog. Does that mean Cherry Red is going to reissue some of your older albums?
They now own us lock, stock and barrel, yeah. So they'll do what they want. But no, there's we're actually at the moment in the process of doing something with the first albums that are now deleted that you can't get. So what we call the chapter one of the Cats in Space story are the albums with original singer Paul Manzi. So we're going to look to do something with those albums because you can't get them anymore, and people have been on at us for 2-3 years now, saying when you're going to do Too Many Gods and Scarecrow again, but we've known in the back of our minds this was going to happen, so we've had to hold back because the worst thing we could have done was to reissue those first two albums and then say to Cherry Red, well, we've got loads of stock of all our albums. There's nothing in it for them, So we've had to dwindle it down over the last 4 years. So it's a good time to reissue now.
Now, you mentioned there's no time machine on the cover of the album, but the album's pretty intricate. Who's the artist responsible for putting that together?
Well, our normal artist, Andy Kitson, he does all of our sleeves up into Time Machine. He did the gatefold artwork for Time Machine, but due to the way that things worked out with the scheduling of getting Time Machine out in time, because we also had a double live album coming out last year as well, Fire in the Night. So we actually did 2 really heavy duty projects last year. I don't even know how we got away with it, to be honest, because we were flat out in the studio from January right the way through till God knows when. So unfortunately, the way things worked out, we just didn't have time to get the concept for the sleeve with Andy in place. So we looked around for available imagery, and then we doctored some of it, and then Stevie did some digital stuff. And we basically used an image that we bought. Like it's digital art, which is something that we've never done before. But it was also quite a nice time to try it because of the Cherry Red thing. We wanted to try and put a flag in the sand and say, right, this is the new regime, and is still very much inside the album sleeve. If you open it up, you'll see an amazing London Bridge piece of artwork, which is phenomenal. I just found the whole package was, even more than before, if that makes sense, And it also, I saw this picture of this solitary man looking out into, the hemisphere, and it's like, who is he? Well, the answer is he's all of us. That's the thing about Time Machine. He is all of us. So that's the concept, if you like.
Now, I know that Cats in Space did most of their touring to promote this album last year. Do you have any tour plans for 2025?
Yeah, Time Machine rolls on this year. We've got a festival to do in March in the UK. We've got a Swedish cruise that we're going on at the end of April. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it, but it says Silja. And that's a first time us playing in front of the Swedes, and they've been waiting a long time for that. So we're really excited about that one. We've got a French festival later in the year. We've got an Irish festival that we're doing for the first time. We've got a couple of other festivals. We've got a couple of other UK festivals as well. So the front half through till the autumn are all going to be festival dates, continuing the promotion of Time Machine. And then we've got some of our own dates that we're planning in October, which will start the celebrations of the 10th anniversary of the band as well. And yeah, there's going to be some, fingers crossed, there could be some pretty exciting stuff coming up on the live front for the band this year. So yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be a really good year for us. But the main thing is we want to get overseas, because there's a lot of people overseas that we've got to reach out to. It's been too long. We got over before COVID, and we was just starting to get a tour sorted out, and it all fell down. And it's not, unfortunately, we've not been able to piece it back together again since. So we've got to concentrate on that, really.
I know that you recently played Firefest. You shared the stage with Reunited Touch and Robin McCulley and Mad Max. How did that go for you guys?
Amazing. Well, Touch, one of the all-time great AOR bands. I mean, the minute that whole Firefest actually started off with a conversation between me and Bruce Mee. He said, I'm trying to get Touch to come to the UK. I said, Cats in Space. I said, Touch and Cats in Space and one other band, we'll smash it, get them over, we'll do a couple of dates. And I think that'd be really good. And he kind of grew into Firefest. I'm not quite sure what happened there. But yeah, fair play to him. He stuck his neck on the block and put a lot of money behind that. And it was a really good vibe, you know, because it hasn't happened for such a long time that, you know, a lot of people really were behind it, and it was a really good event. It was, you know, triumph over adversity, I'd say that was, and we had a really good night as well. So we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves.
Now you mentioned your live release, "Fire in the Night," that came out in July of 2024. It was actually just a few months before Time Machine. It must have been a pretty special show for you guys to put it out on recording. So why don't you tell me about that night?
Yeah, well, we've done a live album before, back in 2018, because when we supported Thunder, we was lucky enough to bung a few quid to their recording, and they recorded our shows as well. And as we was managed by Danny from Thunder at the time, he said, well, we put a live album out in the interim. So, but this was the first attempt of us doing a proper double live album in the true sense of Strangers in the Night, Live and Dangerous, and Kiss Alive, and Brampton Comes Alive, you know. And everyone is saying, when are you going to do a live album, a proper live album, blah, blah, blah. So our wonderful sound guy, Pete Russell, who is, you know, a legend in the business, he said, I've managed to blag you a load of recording gear for the next tour for free. All we got to do is work out how to use it, set it up, and we'll record all the dates on the tour as best we can. I was like, wow. So we did that on the Kickstart the Sun tour, on the second tour, because it was in theatres. But unfortunately, some of the nights the recording went down, some of the nights recorded, but not all the show. And then we had about 4 shows that were totally recorded. But the night we was gunning for was a place called the Stables in Milton Keynes, which is a very special theatre that we all love. Ask anybody in the UK about the Stables that's played there, they say it's one of their favourite venues. It's made acoustically for live bands, particularly to record. So we recorded that show, and about 70% of the live album is from that gig. And there's a bit from a couple of other gigs as well. A bit like Frampton Comes Alive, where it's predominantly one show, but it's kind of dovetailed with a few bits from other shows as well. And it just came out amazing. You know, there's no jiggery pokery on that double live album. We've left all the warts and all the mistakes, all the little glitches. They're all in there because it's real. You know, there's about 2 fixes on the whole album, and I can't even tell you what the fixes were because I can't remember. Oh, I can. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a dropout on one of the guitars in one of the songs, and we had to use that take because the rest of the take was so amazing. But one of the guitar mics, for some reason, dropped out, so we had to touch that up. And that was the only thing. Not anything else. All the vocals are absolutely as is. So, yeah. And then we shoved it out as a double live album as a parting gesture, if you like, to our label, The Harmony Factory, you know, before we went to Cherry Red. But I love the album. It sold very well. I mean, it's been repressed already on CD, and the vinyls have gone pretty much. So, yeah, there's talk about reissuing the vinyl again on that one because it was so popular. So, yeah, that could be a little exciting thing going on this year as well.
Now I'm going to hit the time machine on you. We're going to go back to 1992. You have some songwriting credits on an Asia album, Aqua. That was the first album Asia did with vocalist John Payne. I wanted to know what the experience was like for you co-writing with, I mean, the who's who of musicians, Jeff Downes, Steve Howe, Carl Palmer, Simon Phillips, a lot of prominent musicians on this particular album.
I know. I could honestly that whole what I call the Aqua period in Brighton, down on the coast. I could talk for days about it. That was me and Jeff Downes were working together for 18 months, maybe longer. So there's a lot of stories to tell when it comes to that. But kind of, he was looking to put Asia back together because he was producing my band If Only at the time, and we was in the studio making this monster of an AOR album that took 3 years to make. And me and Jeff became pals, and we started writing bits and bobs and having a laugh and just jamming away. And then he said, "I want to put Asia back together." He wanted Glenn Hughes, I think, at one point, but Glenn wasn't in the best place at the time. I remember meeting Glenn one day in a rehearsal studio when they were doing something. And then John Payne cropped up, and I absolutely loved John's voice. I mean, what a singer. Lovely guy. We became good mates. He came in, and the three of us just started knocking these songs out. And he said, "Yeah, we're going to use these for the Asia album." I was like, "Oh, wow." So I got a few co-writes. I sang backing vocals on a few of the songs. One of the songs got into this film called Freddy FR07, which was a huge film in England at the time. I mean, cast-wise, it had Ben Kingsley and Vanilla Scales and Boy George and George Benson, I think. Loads of these amazing people. The film didn't fare so well, unfortunately, but hey, there you go. But the weird, I could talk for days about it. There's a lot went on during that period. But if I remember rightly, we was in the studio one night and we'd been on the vodka, and they were going to do a premiere of the film in London the next day, and we were too hungover to go to the premiere of the film with our song in it. And someone told me later that Lady Diana went to the premiere of this film, and I'm like, oh my God. So we really seriously messed up big time there. We messed up a lot back then. They were crazy days. We was in Advision Studios in Brighton for 2 years, pretty much. And it was really good times, really, really, really good times. So yeah, I'm chuffed to be involved on the best Asia album that they ever recorded.
And unfortunately, nobody can hear it unless they bought it back then, because it's been lost throughout time and it's not streaming anywhere. You can't buy it again. It's kind of deleted like your back catalog.
Really? Good grief. I can't. They've really missed a trick there, because the one thing they should do is release that on vinyl, because I know a lot of people that love that album, because I know they went in and did Arena and Aria and stuff like that in the 90s when grunge had killed off that kind of music. But yeah, I know Aqua. I mean, we were signed to this little label that got distributed through SAR Records in Japan or something like that. But back then there was no internet. There was no kind of handling of, I wasn't managing the band. I mean, I was just, a crazy kind of guitar player that was kind of probably drinking too much back then. So I didn't have a handle on the business end of it whatsoever, because other people were doing that for us. But they were doing a pretty crap job by all accounts.
A lot of the John Payne stuff's tough to get, at least over here in the States.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of business ends there with the guys. I mean, I don't know, but I know they were continually doing different deals for different things, but I don't know. I was long gone by then. I completely lost touch with them, through the 90s.
Now, before I let you go, I got to ask you if the name Cats in Space was inspired by the Muppets sketch Pigs in Space.
Pigs in Space. That's the first thing everybody says, of course, and we often get referred to as a bunch of Muppets. So it's probably a very apt name. No, it's just, as we've always said, it was a Marmite name. I like Marmite names, either you love it or you hate it. And at the end of the day, what's in a name? Cats in Space, it does have a meaning. It's about me and Stevie had lost two of our cats that had recently died when we formed the band. And we just sat in the pub one day and he said, "Oh, we're getting all upset about our cats. They're looking down at us from outer space." He said, "Cats in Space." And it went, "Oh, Cats in Space." And don't forget, it was only going to be one album, one project called Cats in Space. Didn't matter. Who cared what the name was? It was just going to be one album. And now it's like, oh, geez, But then we made up this cat pod, which is our emblem, with the ears and the visor. And people know us from that without even the name. So it's a bit like Eddie and Iron Maiden, Everyone knows Iron Maiden through Eddie. without even having Iron Maiden written, you know it's Iron Maiden. I said, how cool if we could make us be recognised by the cat pod, not by the name. And we are kind of, all our merchandise is fully about the cat pod. It's very rarely about us or stuff like that, So it's, yeah. And as I've also said, everyone's name is stupid until it becomes part of the industry. Def Leppard. I mean, it's the terrible spelling, and it's a play on Led Zeppelin, and everyone goes Leopard. They love it, So it's a name's a name. It becomes good when people get used to it, or not.
Well, Greg, those are all the questions I have for you today. The new Cats in Space, the current Cats in Space album, Time Machine, is out now through Esoteric Antenna, Cherry Red Records. Fantastic album. I wish I listened to it months ago. I listened to it after I did like my best of the year. I would have put you in the top 3 for sure.
Definitely. Oh, that's nice to know, George. Well, better late than never. But, at the end of the day, the main thing is you like it. And, hopefully everybody watching this, go out and have a listen to it. And people's time is short these days. And there's so much music that is being bombarded. Very few people kind of go, I'm just going to sit down and listen to a load of new stuff. It's very hard to get people to do that anymore. But listen to Cats in Space. And if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back.
That's a good deal. You won't have to give out $1.
Exactly. Hasn't happened so far, George.
Well, Greg, thank you for your time today. Thanks for telling me everything about Cats in Space, and I wish you the best of luck with the new album, and I hope to see you in the US one day soon.
Hopefully that would be magic if we can, mate. And I'll see you on YouTube.
Once again, I want to thank Greg Hart of Cats in Space for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest album, Time Machine, out now through Esoteric Antenna and Cherry Red Records. Head over to your favorite streaming platform, take a listen to the album. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy, support the artist. For all things Cats in Space, head over to their official webpage, catsinspace.co.uk. I also want to thank Matt Ingham at Cherry Red Press for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. Discover your next favorite artist on the Rock is George podcast.